Excellence. Awesome. Yeah. That's like Swiss. Yeah. Awesome. 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 Isaac?
For me, I would say it's an exemplary lifestyle.
Oh, thank you for using your mic. Means the world to me. It doesn't make me feel like a radio. But yeah, exemplary lifestyle. You know that our lives does more of the preaching and the influence than even the words that we speak. I've had so and this is not to boast in any way. I recall when I was in SS3 in secondary school, one parent came to school and she was looking for who Olushore was. And I'm like, what have I done? And says her daughter insists on cutting her hair because Olushore is cutting her hair. And I'm like, how? Why? She's like, oh, I'm telling you. She's like, she likes Senior Shuri so much, and she just wants to be like Senior Shuri, and Senior Shuri is cutting her hair. Eventually, she had to cut her hair because her mother couldn't convince her otherwise. And that's what exemplary lifestyle is. People making decisions about their lives because of you, and you may not even have had any sort of influence or conversation with them to have a direct influence. So yes, exemplary lifestyle. Okay. We have what's it called now? Something that we would like us to discuss. And please, I am not a microphone. So I'm not a radio. So we're gonna engage. Do we promise? Do we promise to engage? Yay, thank you, success. So AJ, which of the core values do you resonate with more? AJ? Is AJ here? No, it's not here. Okay, Mr. Osho from Mars. Mr. Osho from Mars. Do you want to tell us which of the core values you resonate with? Mr. Osho? Mr. Osho is not here. Hmm. Ayobami. Ayobami. Am I here alone?
Yes, I'm with you.
Oh, thank you. So come on.
For me, it's integrity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very important as well. Integrity is not part of our core values, though. But integrity is very important. But I mean, which one of the three core values? Let me share my screen again so that you can see it. Which one of the three core values? We have spirituality, synergy, passion, exemplary lifestyle, excellence, diligence, and discipline. So, Ayobami, which one of those ones do you like resonate with?
Oh my bad.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I'd say diligence. Diligence.
Yes, 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 yes. The hand of the diligent will bear rule. See thou a man diligent in his business. He'll stand before kings, he will not stand before mean men. So please, I want to be your friend because when you start standing before kings, I want to be able to, have that influence. Awesome, 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 awesome. Success, do you want to tell us? You're our guest for today, but do you want to, which of the sweet core values you resonate with?
Okay, I think for me it would be excellence still. I think that's one of the things that really stands out for me
Mm,
because it shows in everything you do, like you cut across every part of your life,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I love it. I love it. I love it. Where is everybody? So AJ hasn't spoken. Is AJ back now? Is Mr. Osho from Mars back now? Oh, Rosalind is back. Okay, Rosalind, which of our core values do you resonate with? Okay, let us go quickly to the next. So I will share my screen now, and I would like a volunteer reader. Okay. Anybody volunteering to read for me, or I should go ahead and read? Am I here alone?
No, you're not. But I can't see your screen anymore. Can I try?
Okay, you can't see my screen anymore. 1 second, let me pull it back up. Thank you. I really like interaction. Like, I like when I'm being spoken to and people are talking back to me. You don't make me feel like alone. Okay, so let me share my screen again and we can go right in. Um, 1 second. I'm sharing the wrong one. That's why. 1 second. Okay, can you say this now?
Yes, I can.
Awesome.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. Ada, 29, is a high-performing consultant. She's getting married in 6 months. Kunle says, Kunle says Ada is intense. She checks his tone, she reads his messages. If he goes quiet for a few hours, she assumes something is wrong. If he corrects her, she hears disrespect. Last week during an argument, Kunle said, I'm not your enemy, but sometimes it feels like you're fighting me for something I didn't do. Ada insists she's just protecting herself and not tolerating nonsense. Her friends are divided. Some say Kunle needs to be more patient. Others say Ada is sabotaging something good. Ada says, I've worked too hard to ever feel small again.
I've worked too hard to ever feel small again. So I have some questions from this story that I would like us to discuss. Is that okay? Is that okay? Oh God, I'm alone.
Yes, boss. Yes, it's okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I like the conversation. Is Ada simply strong and self-aware, or is something unresolved influencing how she shows up? Second prompt. If you were Kunle, would you stay and walk through this, or would you see it as a red flag? Now let the battle begin. Any takers? Any takers? Any takers? Who is going to throw the first jab? Come on. Come on.
Hi guys, sorry. Can you
Thank
hear
you.
me?
Oh, yes, you are very audible.
Okay, fantastic. So for me, I think definitely she has some unresolved issues. Um, for people who tend to have those kind of perceptions, it most of the time comes from a place of hurt. And they're not so sure of how to handle that hurt, right? If I were Kunle, would I want to wait? The question first would be, is Ada ready to admit? Because it's one thing to have an issue. Secondly, it's another thing to agree that you have an issue and
Hmm.
then be willing to walk through it, right? So I think the
Hmm.
main question that could decide whether or not Kunle should wait is if she's willing to actually walk through the pain that she has. Because if she's not, there's almost no point trying
Hmm.
at all.
Okay.
So I think that would be from my own end. It's is she willing to walk through? If she's someone if I'm to be in that position and maybe someone I really care about, I would first look
Obviously,
at
Kunle really cares about her. He's our
yeah, so
boyfriend or fiance or fiancé.
yeah, so that I think that would be the main question for me. Is
Mm,
she willing to actually what's it called? Um, give the thoughts to
mm, mm.
getting better, or is just
Okay,
determined to stay in her own ways? Yeah.
thank you. I have a question for you, AJ. How do you know that Ada has unresolved issues from the what were the things that showed?
So the statements, I think the statements are there. So when you hear people trying to overtly reaffirm themselves, for
Mm.
people who are confident in who they are and in what they can do, you'd hardly hear such statements from them,
Which
right?
statement particularly?
So statements like, "Oh, I've worked so hard to be belittled again." Okay, who belittled you before? Who said
Mm,
you're less of anything before? Right? It means that something has happened somewhere at some point that made that become an issue, right?
mm.
Without that happening, she probably won't make that statement, right?
Okay.
Statements like that come from a place of previous hurt.
Mm. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oluwase, Oluwase, are you able to speak?
Yeah,
Okay.
good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So my thoughts sort of align with AJ's comments.
Thing.
It's a red flag.
Would you
She get
say
problem.
if you were Kunle?
Uh, and there's stuff to be resolved. Probably the wedding will not happen in 6 months.
So if you were doing like this, it's over. Babe, I'm not doing again. No.
No, but I mean, there are issues to talk about. You can't be ready to fight every time. Jay, calm down. You know, there's stuff she needs to probably walk through. Just the fact that she always reads a negative interpretation to, checks, feedback, and all of that. It's a red flag. 6 months is enough time to probably talk about it, but I'm surprised they got this far.
Love, that's four-letter word. Very strong. It can do the impossible. That's why it's the greatest gift. So maybe that answered your question. Kunle is over in love, but at some point, like they say, love is never enough. Well, that's very debatable, but anyways, thank you for sharing, Isaac. Isaac.
Hi, they have
Hi.
basically broken down most of what I wanted to say.
Let's say it again.
Okay.
Repetition is the key to learning.
Yes, okay. Very clearly, as AJ said, when someone finds every opportunity to reassert themselves, clearly they are still fighting an internal battle that's making them feel small or making them feel hurt or making them relive some past hurts over again. So that reassertion is to try to, overcome that. But when things like this happen, usually the people closest to you, especially your romantic partner, is the biggest victim because this person, as the case study says, is this person is basically being punished for an offense they did not commit.
Why
Right?
do? Why do you think that is? Sorry to interject here. You know, we're able to. So I'm assuming now that I'm Ada.
Okay.
Mm. We're able to. We don't behave that way to our bosses. We don't behave that way to some of our friends. So why are we just bashing the poor boy that his only offense was to love. Why? Why do you think that is?
Well, personally, in my own opinion, that may not be very popular. I consider it to be what I call the cost of romance. Right.
Cost of
It
romance.
means that the reason why, I mean,
Plotting.
if you worked with someone who has had a traumatic past, like as a
Mm,
colleague, for someone like me, I would still be able to tell. Just from a
mm,
few interactions a week, I might be able to tell. But
mm,
that's not something everyone can notice. But for why the romantic partner is the biggest victim, I think it's simply because this is the person that's at the time most vulnerable to you
okay.
and the person you are most vulnerable to. So your boss may not be able to see you under the hood, right? This person is always
Mm,
seeing you at your most professional, your colleague, same thing. I mean,
mm,
you already, I mean, you know the whole thing. You know what we always have to do before we get to the office or before
mm,
we turn on the screen, for our
mm,
virtual meetings. But this person
mm.
actually sees you behind the scenes. And so they
Yeah.
would basically see, the sides that are not the friendliest.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And I think just to add to what you have said, so I think I didn't introduce myself at the start of this, so I would introduce myself after I've said what I said. I think it could also be a case of an expectation of unconditional positive regard. And what is unconditional positive regard? It is that state where someone accepts you for who you are exactly without any expectations of you to change. They regard you unconditionally in a positive way. It's kind of like the way God sees us, that God sees us through Jesus, right? That's to put it in context for us to understand it. And in a romantic relationship, that is one of the key things that holds a romantic relationship together, unconditional positive regard. You expect the best. So maybe Ada was just expecting Kunle to regard her positively, unconditionally. Or maybe that's the reason why, that's um, um, typically would happen. Would you understand? So I'll come back
Sorry,
to, okay.
so can I just add something to that? So I can get expectations, but I think, which I think is sometimes where I have issues, right?
Mhm.
Is expectations not communicated really isn't an expectation. For
Mm,
example, if you're getting hired for a job, your employer is not, your employer states to you, these are the expectations, these are the things that we expect you to fulfill,
mm,
right? If you do not meet up with these expectations, right, they'll tell you, oh, we can't continue with you because you have not met up with the expectations. Expectations are meant to be communicated. When you don't communicate expectations, you can't really demand for
so
any
that's
form
another
of
thing. You can't demand.
yeah. So
Yeah. Oh, no,
it's
no, this
a
is so good.
different case if maybe as part of the backstory, she had actually communicated what she was expecting. But
Mm-hmm.
when you don't communicate that, you don't really, to an extent, you don't really have a right to say, oh, this person isn't meeting my expectations because in his own mind, he's doing the best he can, but you're not giving him
Mm,
the feedback to say, oh, okay, this is the way I want to be loved. This is how I feel I want to be appreciated, right? Communication is
mm,
goes beyond just saying, oh, this is he's not meeting me or he's not doing this or he's not doing that.
mm-hmm,
What
mm-hmm.
exactly are you looking for as a person? So yeah,
Mm,
I'll just give
mm.
it a
Thank you for adding that. Also, I'll still come back to Isaac and then introduce myself before we move on. Um, that's easier said than done because some people are more expressive than other people. a case in point, someone somewhere is in a relationship with a very expressive person. And the other, typically, you find that in marriages, one party is more expressive than the other. In relationships, you find that one party is the more expressive one. They can say, oh, this is how I'm feeling. They can communicate that accurately. But the other party then now has to learn how to communicate what they feel, how they feel it in the way the other person will understand. Because you know, because one party is modeling that value or that trait. And that's not saying that I'm not trying to dispute what you're saying, that is not important, that communication is important. But I have often found that communication is a skill that it has to be learned. And in learning how to communicate with your partner, the way I communicate with my partner is not the way, I expect Success to communicate with her partner now. Do you understand? So you are learning communication in the context of your partner. And that adds a different twist to what communication is in a romantic relationship. So back to Isaac. Would you stay or would you go if you were Kunle?
Okay, interesting.
Yes.
It's not like a very simple answer
Uh-huh. Why? Answer
because
and then say why.
the reason why it's not an automatic, it's a red flag, as
Uh-huh.
Shea and EJ have pointed out,
Uh-huh.
but it's not an automatic go for me, and this is why.
Okay. Right.
Because personally, I believe that everyone is going through a growth process,
Mm.
right? Which means that while Ada, my fiance in this case, may be having this issue that she clearly
Uh-huh.
needs help with, I know because I am self-aware that I also have issues that I need help with. And Ada is also to help me with that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that is what opens me up to be more empathetic towards her.
Mm.
Now, of course, there are conditions. The conditions are, does she acknowledge that this is an issue to be resolved?
Mm.
I mean, she has to, and of course, she will be defensive because the sort of person that says, I've worked too hard to ever feel small again. I mean, if you've interacted with people, you should know to expect a very, very strong defense from such a person. So it
Mm-hmm.
means that you as a partner will need to be very patient. So I will have to be very patient
Mm-hmm.
to eventually find an in to letting her admit. And
Mm.
I mean,
Mm.
you're not torturing her for information or anything, but eventually with prayer and with a lot of emotional intelligence and
Mm.
the fact that you are really a loving person, she will eventually open up. That is if she's willing to acknowledge, right?
Mm.
So when she acknowledges it that this is an issue to be resolved,
Mm.
then you can now figure. I mean, I will not lie you. I'm saying this as a man and not just as any person. I
Mm.
know that as a man, you really need to know how to manage your woman in many cases.
Yeah,
Because
speaking from experience. Moving
yes,
on.
because when you are dealing with a grown woman, you are also dealing with there is a child in everybody. And
Mm-hmm.
so how healed is that child? That's also your
Mm.
responsibility, right?
Mm.
Yeah, it is, at least in a way, right? So you also have to assess, even if she's an accomplished woman, she's the most outspoken person, she's
Mm.
everybody's model.
Mm.
That child in her, what's the state of that child? Is that child still healing? Is that child healed? Is that
Mm.
child the one that had the most amazing childhood that we all wish we had?
Mm.
You should be able to tell and be able
Mm.
to deal with that. So
Mm.
now, does she acknowledge? Okay, say she acknowledges that this is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Is she willing to put in the work with your help?
Mm.
I mean, you should be able to tell. I mean, this is something we should be able to tell. And over time, are you seeing progress? So if you are seeing progress, your question to yourself now is, do you think you're willing to like, is this space fine for you? Are you okay
Mm.
with this space? This might also mean pushing back the wedding date as Sheyi suggested. It might be necessary because that itself might open up another can of worms if she
Yeah.
feels overwhelmed, right? But the whole point is when you notice the pace of progress, and of course you are putting in a lot of help, right, as her partner. Are you fine with the pace? Do you think this is something you can work with? If the answer is yes, well, go for it. You're already helping your partner grow. But if you are not happy with the pace, or you are dealing with someone who, after several attempts and a lot of patience from your end, is unwilling to either acknowledge or unwilling to put in the work, then maybe you need to actually go. But as a man, I'd also suggest you pray about it too, because sometimes Holy Spirit will say, you're here, don't worry, just be
That's
a
it.
little. Yeah. I know everyone is a work in progress. So,
Yeah.
some of us, okay, I won't say us because maybe it's not my case, but I think some partners will have to put in a lot more work than some other people's partners to see the best in their, partner,
Yeah.
their lifetime partners. Thank you.
Awesome. Like that was so good. I liked how you covered all the aspects. Patience, you have to pray, you have to hear from God, you know, you have to be emotionally intelligent. Oh, Isaac, Naman you be. You have to be emotionally intelligent to communicate the weaknesses because the person is already defensive. So you say, you have problem. You you are just sabotaging the goal if you take a brash approach, right? But communicating it with emotional intelligence, emotional maturity, deciding, okay, I'm willing to stay to walk with you through this, that's profound. That's really, really good. So we have new people that have joined us. Welcome, Omotoyosi. Welcome, Enize. We're This is Success Within International. We're a faith-based organization, and we're having this amazing conversation today on healing from trauma. My name is Olushore Adifioye, and I am the host for today. I said I didn't introduce myself. So I'm currently a transformation consultant. That's what I do for work. But are many things, and I'm also very excited about this topic because I trained as a clinical psychologist. So this is very close to home for me. And so now I would be introducing our guest for today. Surprisingly, her name is Success. From Success from Success Within. Oh, clock it, clock it, clock. So Success Oyeshola, she's a coach, and this is what she does, and she's also a part of the Sweet family. So with virtual hands, physical hands, all the hands that we have, can we welcome Success as she takes us on this session? Thank you. Thank you, Ayobami.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Sherry. And sincerely, I think that I'm in the right room, to be honest. The conversations and hearing where our minds are at is just really encouraging. I feel like, oh, we can just go ahead and have a conversation today. Because one of the hardest parts, really, in this entire conversation when it comes to trauma and healing and all of that is people staying in denial. And I'm already in a room where people at least understand the basics of it's a required journey, that makes the work even a lot easier. So I will try to share my screen. Can you see my screen? No. Okay, I think, Sherry, I can see your screen for some weird reason. Okay, it stopped. So can you confirm if you can see my screen now? Okay. Uh-huh. It is I get right. That's the idea. So can you confirm if you can hear me and if you can see my screen?
You are
Just
audible and your screen is visible.
perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sherry. And then, truth be told, Denise, you're very true about that, especially because whenever we're having conversations like this, they make you look like it's a feminine thing. But I think that we can agree that there's something happening with the millennials and also the Gen Zs. We are having more aware men and men that are, coming up to the front to say we are manning things up. And it's really beautiful to see, to be honest. And I think this room is a proof of that. Okay, so today's conversation is going to be pretty simple and pretty straightforward. And why? Because I believe that the easiest way to implement and also for application is simplicity. If you're able to simplify what needs to be done, it makes it easier to execute. And I'm not here to like bombard you guys with, bag of several information. No, the idea is to have every single person leave here today with at least one action points, at least one area where you have clarity, one area where you have fresh perspective, and then you can move with it. So even if I have a few slides that I will be sharing and quite a number of things that I will be sharing, the point is not for you to carry everything and go, because that would be very counterproductive. The point is for you to pay keen attention enough to be able to get the perspective you need, the information you need, and clarity as to what is the next step or action that you're meant to take. And that's like the most important thing. If you get that by the end of the session, this session would have been an amazing session. So I had to put that context just so that we don't have any pressure to feel like we need to move everything in, we need to take everything in. So I'm just going to start with a very quick introduction. Like Shuri already mentioned, I am many things, right? So I am a coach. I coach at Green Cedar Expressions as the lead coach. I'm also a mom, proud mom of two kids, and a proud wife for my amazing husband. And I'm a family person. Like I would always find a reason or an excuse to put in family parenting conversations because something I'm passionate about, and especially the season of life I'm in. I am a senior project manager. Project management for me is not just a career, it's actually a lifestyle. It shows in everything I do. I'm also an author. I've authored two books, one my memoir, which I'm super passionate about, and the feedbacks on that one has been super amazing. I'm also a founder, founded Green City Expression, a co-founder of two organizations, the Nicole Project Management Consulting. We consult for businesses, and then also a partner at PMP Hub, which is also a project management training hub. So you can see like project management is littered around everything that I do, and also coaching. So that is me in a nutshell. And I always say this, I am my daddy's daughter, physically and spiritually. I am a daddy's girl physically, and I'm also a daddy's girl spiritually. And then I think that's literally what drives my audacity across the several things that I do. And the thought of I can do all things basically because my daddy's got my back. So yes, I'm that kind of person. I'm a daddy's girl, proudly so. So I'm just going to ask a quick question before we get into this. And my question would be to everyone in the room: what is one thing that you're hoping to get in the session? One thing, just one thing. If you can type in the chat, don't worry, I'm joking like Sherry, but I'll do so much later. Do so. You can type in the chat. What is one thing you're expecting from this session? Before I go right into it, I basically have like just 5 slides. So it's going to be like conversation and they just prompts. So, what is one thing you're expecting from this session? Let me be sure that I am very well aligned with your expectation. Hi, Eunice. One thing, one thing, one thing. Because, like Ajali said, there is no expectation if you've not communicated it. So let's all type in what our expectation is, and then so that we can easily align and also tailor to the session. Because I'm hoping we didn't just come here because SWI said we should come, so let's see what goes. No, that's not an intentional way to leave. So I'm waiting. I'm waiting. I'm guessing that our expectations are like 12 lines or 12 pages long, and we're still typing. Okay, I'm still waiting. I'm actually going to wait until I get feedback from everybody. So if we're going to be here till 12, would wait. I hope to learn, I hope to be more learned about solving this unique type of problem. I like your I like your wing because you know that your expectation as as K-leg. What do you mean by unique type of problem? Okay, I would interpret that as conversations around trauma related conversations and unresolved issues. Okay, I'll take that. It's better than nothing. So AJ, other than people are other than, I'm not joking. You're very correct actually. So Oluwaseyi Eneze, is that how it's pronounced? I fear that I'm murdering your name, or should I just stick to Ada? Because I think Ada seems like Adafa seems
No,
very
it's Eneze, and the surname is
Eneze.
Adava, not
Okay.
Ada. Sorry, I'm
Adava.
outside and it's noisy. That's
Oh, no,
why.
that's fine. I wanted to be
Yeah.
sure I'm not murdering the name that your
No, no,
parents
it's fine. And
your
I'm
name.
actually typing already as well. It's
All right.
fine. Thank you.
Eneze. Okay, perfect. Rosaline. All right. So please, can we type in the comment section what our expectations are? Conversations around this, people usually would shy away for conversations around trauma and the likes, to be honest. And it's not my first time seeing this. I see this everywhere. But at the end of the day, what we don't confront, we can't improve. And what we don't improve does not automatically change. Looking forward to hear the perspective to be shared on healing trauma. Okay. I'll wait for one more and then I'll move. So yep. So I'm going to just wait and then we'll move on. Looking forward to learning how to be self aware of trauma and healing from it instead of shying away from it. Thank you so much, Ayobami, for that. And I think that this is pretty important because I'm trying to actively work on dealing with some trauma, and I believe this is a first step in the right direction. Spot signs of trauma in myself. Perfect. As in, what you actually said, Shuri, is very spot on, especially because people tend to be very accurate, laser focused, and determined, in spotting trauma in others. And then when it comes to looking at themselves, they automatically become blind. And then it's the reason why these conversations are very important. And then I think the first thing I would start with, let me just move on to my next slide. The first thing I'm going to start with here is okay, let me go back. Now, when we're talking about the old trauma conversation or healing, right, it's not about what broke you, right? It's actually about what you are now ready to build. And I realized that one of the reasons why people shy away from conversations like this is because they see these conversations as fingers being pointed at them, but there's a problem somewhere. Now, I would take something that was said earlier in the context setting conversation. One of us said, "Oh, she obviously has an issue." And then, if I'm to point back to what Isaac said, if you come to somebody and you are speaking to someone like that, you're like, um, Isaac, you have an issue. The likelihood of that feedback, no matter how correct it might be, to be taken is very low, right? And then when we are approaching conversations like that, even when you tell yourself that there's a high likelihood that your subconscious will push back that communication. And then the real work really is not getting your conscious to be aware of what's happening. The real work is getting your subconscious to be very well in tune with what's happening. And that's because 80% of our decisions and actions and conversation actually happen from our subconscious, even before we are consciously aware of it, right? So this is very important for us to put this into context. And I'm going to start this off with a story, right? And this is someone I knew in person. And then this person is high performing. And I'm sure that we've actually seen, but this is not just in one place. I've seen this happen also across other organizations that I've worked with. Now you've met like high performing professional, accomplished, respected, like thriving on paper. Every single thing looks amazing. Like you're like, why is this person not seeing it? They would literally come in contact with like major opportunities. And then what you find that they would do is they would procrastinate, they would doubt themselves, they would shrink. And it's not a problem of capability. It's just that there's somewhere inside them that feels like, oh, this could be unsafe. Visibility could be, risky, or their story really, there's just something there that really stops them from pushing forward. And you can actually see opportunities, you see different things available to them, but they're unable to plunge into it. I've seen this several times. But there's something we need to understand, that healing is not about revisiting your pain. I see a lot of argument where people are like, oh, God obviously doesn't want us to sit in the place of pain, or there's no point moving back, which is this scripture that I put in here, which says forgetting the former things, and because there is something new. So we interpret this as let's forget the past and move on, like we move on. And then one thing you don't understand is that forgetting the past, it's not neglecting or living in denial of what happened in the past. It's the fact that I'm aware of what happened in the past, but I am going to be repositioning for us to move forward to the future. But the thing is this, you cannot reposition while having something clinged to the past. So it's like saying, oh, I have something that happened to me and there's a rope tied to me, and I'm like, I'm going to forget whatever it is at the back and I'm just going to keep moving. You can't move until you disconnect and you really process what has actually happened in your past. You can show up looking confident, you can show up looking amazing, you can show up looking beautiful aesthetically, but it would always show up in the moment where you least expect. And then that is the reason why it's not about staying stuck in the past or reliving your pain, it's or blaming people for what exactly has happened. It's about understanding your patterns, increasing your emotional freedom, basically. Now, removing whatever internal limitations that you currently have, whether you are aware of it or not. And it's about expanding capacity. So, the same way we would approach a transformation conversation or personal efficiency conversation, effectiveness conversation, we need to approach it from this way. So, I said this to say that healing conversation is not a sad conversation. It's not a conversation of, oh my God, all is lost, or I've been through this, I've been through that. I recently had like an interview where I had to go. It was an interview about my book, my memoir that I recently launched. And I think that one of the very striking questions that was asked was, it was a Thanksgiving show sort of, and then my interview was featured in there. And then one of the questions that was asked was, what are you most thankful for? And truth be told, the only thing I could be thankful for at that time I could recall was, oh, the gift of pain. Now, the same pain that somebody could literally view and see that this is the reason why I can't move, this is the reason why I feel very stuck, this is the reason why I can't be optimistic, is the same reason why someone is literally saying, thank God I went through that pain. He gave me perspective. A practical biblical example will be Joseph. Now we know the story of Joseph. Now, whilst normally when we're telling the story of Joseph, we talk about the court, we talk about the betrayal, we talk about prison, palace, and all those things. But there was something that I noticed in Joseph's story that really stood out for me. It was the fact that Joseph actually had every reason to be bitter, to be defensive, to be vengeful, because, oh well, he literally went through a lot. But instead, Joseph became emotionally regulated. He was able to discern. He was able to steward the power that came to him at the time. And you could see that from his statement that he made when he said that you meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. That is not a denial case. He could acknowledge that, oh yes, imagine the Bible even said he cried. Like, you could tell that he embodied the entire emotion, but he was able to gain perspective from it. And that's the reason why we're having this conversation today. We're literally having this conversation so that we know that we are not having a sad conversation. So it's not a sad talk today. It's actually not a sad talk. It's us literally, having perspective or putting perspective to the experiences that we've had. Now, the next thing I want to really lay on the table is, why does this matter? Why is this conversation even important for you? Why is it something that you should pay attention to? At least I know some of the people in this room personally. And then I'm also very well aware that if you saw something like this and you decided to sign up, it's because you are someone that is thinking, great, you have high ambitions, you definitely want to become someone really very I wouldn't use the word influential, or someone that actually has an impact in life. You have a bright future, right? Now, that being said, I'm sure we all agree with that. You have bright future, you want to make money, you want to rise up in your career, you want to build amazing, successful families, you want to build amazing business ventures. You're already in the line of building that, you're already accelerating in your entire life and all of that. Now, the reason why this is very important is because all of the things that we're doing, it doesn't cover the trauma. In fact, success amplifies your trauma. Time does not heal your trauma, it amplifies it. Which will lead me back to the context setting conversation we had earlier. When I don't know if it was Isaac, I can't remember if it was Isaac or it was Shay, when he talked about the fact, I think it was Ajali, when he talked about the fact that the people closest to you, um, they get to get the brunt of your hurt. They get to get the bleeding from your hurt, even more than those that are outside. And I'll give you a practical example because I have lived it also. And it was when I went through counseling, I even saw myself. Now, prior to getting married, right? I'm the happy success, almost never gets angry. Like if someone offends me, I could easily just, shove it off and everything. When I got married, I was a very angry version. Even me myself, it shocked me that I can be this angry. And then it was not until when I actually went in for counseling that we started to unravel like all the conversations to see what exactly was it. Because I would not lie to you. I went straight on to accuse my husband. You have turned me into a very angry person. And this is me being playing with everybody. It was not until when we had the conversation, the series of conversations and all of that, was not when I realized that I whenever I had issues with people, I had a way of just letting myself know that, what, this person is, at least if we are done, when we are done, I'm going back to my house. It's not like you are literally always in my space. Two, I never really saw marriage or relationship being modeled in such a space whereby, oh, my mom and my dad are in the same space for extended period of time. My dad is based abroad. So most of the times I just see he's around for like a couple of weeks and then he's gone. So in my head, subconscious, and this was not a conscious conversation, it was me finding out what had built my response and my inability to be able to put up with conflict and resolve it without being the angry person. Right. And then I realized that I'm now moving into a marriage where I have a very present husband and he's annoying me. Why are you so present? Like, why are you so in my space? And imagine where you're moving from that extreme into like this extreme. It now becomes pretty difficult. It was a major cause of issue where it feels like, so I'm saying this to say that a lot of the time when most of us growing up in the context where we didn't really like, we now grow up and we say that, oh, I want to move into maybe like the exact opposite. Meanwhile, we've actually not built what it requires to even live in a healthy environment. And then when you're in a healthy environment, it now feels like it's a lot, like it's choking. Like, I don't have what is built. And your body sees it as stress because it's very unfamiliar. Your mind, your subconscious naturally wants to pull you towards what's familiar because that's what it senses as safe. What's familiar comes up as safe to your subconscious. So even when I was in a situation whereby I am in a space whereby I'm not with a distant husband, I'm with a present husband who is literally interested in having a say, knowing what's happening. For me, it was like, can I breathe? Can I breathe? And it took counseling for me to be able to see that this was what was happening. Because prior to that, you had asked me, I didn't have any issues. I was fine because, oh well, I was delivering excellently. I was, anywhere you find success, right? Literally, you can tell that every single thing I'm delivering is amazing. But what makes the difference is that when you are really in your core space, in your family, in your relationship, performance can't sustain you. You can only perform for long. When you are in your space where you need to actually let go of like, I'm just exhausted, let me just breathe, you now realize that your breathing means loosening up, and loosening up means unveiling, and unveiling means you now realizing that, oh, this is me. And then this is not a conversation for you to not even come in to say, oh, I'm going to be hard on myself or whatever, because that's what happens most of the time. But one of the things that we need to understand that some of the things that we even tag, let me bring you back to say corporate space or career space, which is something that most of us can also relate to. When we are coming off to say, oh, I'm really tired or I'm really stressed, I'm really this. And there's just a consistent cycle of, oh, tiredness. And then you change jobs, it remains the same. It's just a matter of time, you're back to the same cycle. You get promoted and then you're back to the same cycle of self-doubt. It still shows up. Or you enter a new relationship, but somehow the same dynamic still keeps going on. Now, how you identify the difference is this. When you are stressed or tired, it's situational. If you change the situation and that improves, you understand that that is not tied to any pattern or anything. But when it now becomes, I've changed the context. For example, in this scenario whereby we have people working like multiple jobs, you're from here to there, we're spending short time in growth and everything. You started up your first role and your company was as a toxic space. And then you moved into your next role. And then after a while, it's a toxic space. Or you move into the third role. After a while, at some point, you need to tell yourself that, wait, can we sit and talk? It's harder to do because it requires you to ask yourself questions. Can we sit and talk to realize, okay, what's happening? If you are changing context, but the pattern still remains, it means that there is investigation to be done. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means there's a question to be answered, basically. So at some point, you have to pause and ask, like, is this thing just circumstance or is this a conditioning? Then you can now start moving deeper to ask key question. Because when you look at common realities amongst, say, young professionals. And I'm sitting here because I know that most of us are probably in our middle level career, pushing on to senior level career, and some of us are also starting off. It's important for us to understand that we hear a lot of burnout cycles, imposter syndrome, perfectionism. There is a whole lot of fear of visibility, emotional shutdown. We have a particular generation now where people have anxiety even for basic things like your phone ringing. We have, people that just have problems with even taking calls. And all these things are actually things that show that there's a repeated pattern. And you just need to ask questions. It's not like there's anything wrong with you. It's just ask the right questions and, give the right answers. Basically, that helps you to know how to move forward and adapt, really. Because at some point in your story, something taught you that overworking keeps you safe. It's not something that just jumped on you. You definitely learned that shrinking protects you, or that being perfect prevents, criticisms, or that not needing anyone avoids disappointment. And this one, I see it a lot. Why people come in like nobody sends you, nobody cares about you. You carry your. Whilst I understand the context about that is true, in sense that if you're going to grow, you need to take responsibility for your life. But to sit in a space where you convince yourself that nobody cares about you is to, by yourself, remove yourself from God's covering or God's provision of favor. Because that, as believers, is a provision that is available to us as believers. You now sitting in to say that nobody cares about me. If I don't, I need to sit down and fight myself, and you now go into the self-made mentality. That is you robbing yourself up of what is possible and available. And if your mind doesn't see it as, oh, favor is possible for me, it's possible for men to look at me or for me to benefit from even the influence of others, then you would literally walk past opportunities in plain sight without knowing it until you actually find mercy at some point and you have some instance that pulls you back, or conversations like this that pulls you back into center to say, come in, let's have a conversation with ourselves. So it's important for you to understand this. If you don't get anything from this slide, fine, move on. Leadership amplifies what's inside you. Marriage would amplify it like mad. Entrepreneurship will amplify it because you will be faced with real problems. And normally, that old sponge analogy that when you are pressed, it's what's inside you that will come out. Visibility is worse off. It would amplify you. Like, it's the reason why some of the prayers that we pray a lot of the times, God will not answer because of his mercy. Because if this version of you handles what you are praying for, you will make a mess of it. And it's not because you are bad. It's because there are certain realities and skill sets that are required, which is why you see that if you are probably at the beginning of, say, your career, ministry, or whatever, and you are dealing with, say, lust, or you're dealing with competition, jealousy, right? The Holy Spirit will deal with you there. It's easier to break you there than when you have gotten a semblance of result or success. You've built the ministry, it's all big. And the funny thing is that, and this is me being very, very spiritually aware, the devil is very patient. He would wait for you to grow now. You will be success, you will grow, you will advance, you will everything. Until you get to a point whereby your influence has increased from 100 to about 1,000,000. And that one thing, which is like your old jealousy that could have been fixed when the impact would have been minimal, will now be something that could break your entire thing. Now becomes difficult to come back from it. That is why this conversation is important. So whilst everyone here, I know we are growing and we are trying to ensure that we are making it big, these conversations must be had, not one-off. Routine, create time blocks for these things. just so that we know that as we are growing, we are actually preparing for the place that God has prepared for us. This is a prayer that I've been praying since I think it was 2013. Then 2014 actually, and that was when it was one of the prayers that what's it called, Dr. O then made us pray the 5 prayers, and it was like, God, prepare me for the place that you have prepared for me, because the worst thing that can happen to anybody is for you to arrive at a prepared place unprepared. You would make a mess of it. And if your subconscious is actually the pack that is unprepared, it will do it fast without even you noticing. It will show up in places whereby you don't understand, in your tone, in your gestures, in your defensiveness, in the way you listen, in the way you interpret situations. You would have messed up everything before you even realize that, oh, this is what happened. So it's very important for us to have this conversation. And the question I would ask us today is, what keeps repeating in my life that success hasn't fixed? What keeps repeating in your life that your achievement has not fixed? What keeps repeating in your life that your influence, your impact has not fixed? That you are literally impacting others, you're doing the good work, you are serving selflessly in church, you are getting promoted at work, you are growing, you're doing all of that. What keeps repeating despite all of these things? That just feels like it just keeps showing up. It's a rhetorical question. Don't answer me, but answer yourself. Because if achievement hasn't resolved it, if environment has not resolved it, if all your effort has not resolved it, then perhaps the work is not an external work. It's an internal one. And that's exactly where we're going today. So I'd like us to sit in with that whilst we move into proper definition of what trauma is, right? Because I notice that a lot of the times when we think of trauma, right, we think of it as something bad or something, I want to say something traumatic, something, very big and gigantic that has happened. And then one of the things that we need to understand is that trauma, whilst abuse or violence, major loss or events and all of that, while all of those things are also traumatic experiences, trauma is not limited to extreme events, right? Trauma is not simply an event, in fact. It's literally the impact or imprint of that event on you. That is what is trauma. The event itself is not trauma. Is the reason why two people can go through the same experience and they walk away like with different narrative, different impact. And one person can come out like not affected by it or have processed it and they've moved on. And another person can literally stick with that thing for months and years and they're unable to make a move because of that same experience. And when they narrate the experiences, you're like, okay. And a lot of the times I always say this, and I think I always say this within the context of, how you prepare or show up when it comes to like, spiritual setting, is that, or even any learning environment, is that what you learn or information alone cannot change you. The context in which that information meets you impacts on the fruitfulness of that information. A practical example would be the seed and the sower. The Bible gave that example, or Jesus gave that parable. That I'm going to give you information. It would not make any sense or it won't be useful to you if the information doesn't meet the right context. It's the reason why this whole conversation we're having here will not make any sense to you or be of any use to you if your current mental or subconscious context is, I'm good, I'm perfect, I don't need all this conversation, I need to just focus on strategy, I need to just focus on, if that's your mindset, I promise you this will not help you in any way. So it's important for you to understand that trauma is not just the event. In fact, it's not the event. It's the impact of the event. I'll give you a practical example, something that happened with me even recently. Now, there was a church drama. I won't go into the details, but it really caused like an imbalance, say in our whole entire family dynamics in terms of, we are going to church every Sunday. Obviously, there was just so many misunderstandings across several fronts, from leadership all the way downwards and all that. But what I'm bringing out of this is, whilst I was trying to process that at the time, I remember sitting in and just that day I was really exhausted and tired of the entire situation. And I was like, when you go from, you have a call today, what happened? This call, you're giving the same account to like I want to say 1,000 people, that would be exaggeration, but to multiple people, and you're giving hours of call. I'm like, this is exhausting. I have things I'm doing actively, and this is exhausting. And I remember sitting down one day and I was just asking myself, what exactly is the real problem in all of this? And then what exactly is the potential outcome of all of this? Because I always believe that no experience is wasted. There would always be a use or need for each of the experience. And then when I sat into that, I literally got direction into what next to do, because I began to see that why I was overwhelmed and stressed initially was that I was focusing on what was not within my control. When I sat into that conversation and asked the right questions to say, okay, what exactly is the issue here? And which one concerns me? Which one is within my control? And then I realized, okay, this is within my control. And I was able to get next steps of what I was going to do. And trust me, now, today, looking back, I would say that old disagreement and scattered event was the best thing that happened to me last year, because I can count a lot of things that came as a result of that. A lot of clarity, a lot of opportunities, a lot of open doors. In fact, my entire position for 2026, the optimism I came into 2026 with, the audacity, was as a result of that event. If that event didn't happen the way it was, if I had sat in to be tired, dejected, and all that, or to say I'm going to, how when you experience hurt or someone hurts you, and you decide that I am going to just put that wall of I'm not going to open up to anybody, you are blocking yourself. You are doing yourself, because at the end of the day, that is you deciding to say, I'm not going to allow danger coming. I'm not going to allow help coming either, because the world does the same thing. It protects you. It also prevents you from help. So that's like the concept. So you need to understand that it's not just an event. It's actually the imprint that the event has on you. And I'm going to be sharing with you some simple adaptations. Some of you would be able to relate to some of them. And some of you might have actually seen this in others. For example, if you're constantly criticized growing up, perfectionism may have developed as your own strategy of protection to say, if I get everything right, I won't be attacked. So you find yourself always tweaking, and you can't really sit in with the fact that it's okay. Two, if you experienced emotional neglect growing up, not necessarily abuse, and which is where I would want to say this, that trauma is not just only the impact of what happened to you, it could also be the impact of what did not happen to you. For example, growing up as a child, there are some basic needs you require for your development. If you were deprived of some of those things, like, say, a conducive environment, say, love and affirmation, say, care, say, parental, what's it called, influence from both your parents, father and mother, because they both have unique roles to play in your life. So even if there was something that was missing, right, it also has its impact. It can also result in trauma, where you may now learn to be an overachiever, because you feel like, you need to be emotionally seen for people to be able to, see you and affirm you. You need to be always there to be able to give, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this. And you are consistently counting achievements even when you are exhausted. If you have come from an environment that is unstable, say, you relied on people previously, people let you down consistently, you can build hyper independence, where you find it hard to ask for help. You find it hard to receive help, even if you're in a space. First daughters, oh Lord of mercy. First daughters, we are in these boats and we are sitting comfortably inside, where over the years, because we went through or experienced our parents going through, say, different phases of their life, where at some point they were also dealing with their own issues. They were also trying to parent while also trying to get money. They were not able to balance it all, and there were times whereby we actually needed support as first daughters, but we had to learn over time, but you have to get it together. And now we get into marriage and we want to parent our husbands. It happens. If you're going to be sincere, it's a thing. And it's not only even for first daughters. We also find that across board, where we are building that safe space to say it's safer not to rely on anybody. I beg, to avoid disappointment, which now brings in the case whereby Ajali mentioned earlier, where you are unable to even communicate your expectation because that part of you was never developed. It was blocked a long time ago, because you had already learned that the easiest way to sit in is to just get yourself together. And most of the time, you get to figure things out yourself. So it further I was going to say cement the fact, for lack of a better word. So it further reinforces the idea that you're good on your own, even if that result came at a cost of your sanity, your peace of mind, and your health also deteriorating in the process because you just wanted to do everything yourself. It affects your ability to delegate. It affects your ability to even function properly in senior roles where you need to trust people to get the work done. You now try to have to sit in, micromanage, you're not able to communicate properly, and all of these things. You can see how this thing is actually feeding into every other part of your life. If you experienced rejection, people pleasing can develop as a way where you are trying to avoid abandonment. You can't stand up for yourself. This is not something I'm fine with, but I can't say, don't worry, let's just do it. And what happens is that it will reach here. You would have it up to here. That the day you now decide to now blow up because you've not built the skill of communication, you communicate in a way that literally says the exact opposite of what you feel. That incident now brings you back to your the offender. That now further, validates the fact that, oh, you shouldn't have even communicated in the first place. You see why this conversation is important. None of these things are personality flaws. They are just survival adaptations. And it's important because if we need to shift from the conversation of, oh, it's shame, that means there's something wrong with me. No. We are trying to understand what exactly has happened to us so that we know how to position ourselves moving forward. So not every painful experience qualifies as trauma. It's important to note that because we are experiencing an abuse of the word trauma. We'll come into the office, your boss gives you feedback and you're like, oh, it's a toxic, I'm traumatized. No, pain is part of life. Disappointment is part of life. Conflict is part of life. But when your pain is not processed, especially when it's repeated, it doesn't just disappear, right? You would be able to find out that your nervous system now starts to internalize it one after the other. It doesn't happen once, one after the other. It now starts to influence how you interpret situation, how you quickly react, how you perceive threats. Somebody can come to you now and they say something very harmless. That's literally what's happening with Ada. The guy Kunle is just there. And because she has experienced several what's it called, disappointment, several pain points that she didn't process, it has formed a filter. And that's the filter she uses to interpret every single thing. Somebody is coming to you and you're like, nah, I can't trust this guy. Nah. And you're unable to lock in on relationship or commitment that would help you grow because you're viewing everything from the lens or that filter of trauma. Now, it is not just a spiritual or emotional language or whatever. Neuroscience actually backs this. And I'm sure some of us actually know this already. Research shows that unprocessed, let me just read this out so I don't quote this wrongly, that unprocessed stress can reshape your brain and nervous system responses, that your body can remain on alert when there is no present danger. That's why sometimes your reaction feels bigger than the moment itself. I'm sure we've experienced this at some point where, if we're honest with ourselves, we go through a particular conversation or an engagement with somebody, and then when we finish, like going through it, you're like, why did I shout? Like, was it that deep? Or sometimes when it's not when you want to narrate the incident to someone else, when you're not narrating, you now realize that, okay, it wasn't that deep. But if you are able to sit in beyond that realization to say, what exactly made me feel this thing was this deep, you are now able to actually see that, okay, this is what it is. This is what is driving me. So now the important question here is, what coping mechanism once protected me, but is now limiting me? Because like I said, we're not trying to say you are bad. No, at some point, that coping mechanism was useful and needed. But the thing is, if you allow that coping mechanism to extend beyond the season which it was needed, it starts becoming what would limit you from actually thriving. And that's why we're having this conversation. So it's not a what's wrong with me conversation. It's a what did I learn to just survive conversation. So this is a question we need to ask. And again, don't answer me. Answer yourself. It should be a question that you should sit in with and ask. But what coping mechanism once protected me, but now is limiting me from proceeding, from thriving, from moving, from actually what's it called now? Moving on and thriving and getting better. Now I'm going to move into how exactly our unresolved wounds projected in our different life or in a different aspect of our lives. And I'll be giving a lot of scenarios here just so that a lot of this conversation actually like we can relate and we can understand. So before I move on, I just want to do a call. Are we still here? Are we still following? Have I lost anybody? Are we still here? Thumbs up would do. A comment in the chat would do. Are we still here? Thank you. I see one thumbs up. I see. All right. Perfect. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So let me just move right into the conversation. Now, we have gotten all the information that we need to get regarding what trauma is, what it is not, and all of that. Now, all of this would not make any sense if we're not aware of how to identify it, how to spot it. Because it's one thing to understand trauma conceptually, and it's another thing to recognize how it's actually playing out in our daily lives, right? It's why we have this. Now, unresolved wounds don't usually show up as dramatic breakdowns. Trust me, they really do show up as dramatic breakdowns. They sometimes show up in very subtle but consistent ways, especially in like areas of your career, relationship, your inner self, the conversation you have with yourself, and spirituality. And I really spotlighted these areas because there are areas where people technically look to us whenever they are trying to think about their life or trying to reshape their life and all of that. That's why I focus on these areas. So I'm just going to be giving you some instances. Now I'll start with career. Now, sometimes unresolved wounds, they show up as, self-sabotage right before the opportunity for growth, where you're doing well, opportunities are opening up, and then suddenly you feel like, okay, should I, will I, and all of that. And I will give you a practical example of something that happened to me. And I'm giving you an example about myself to make you understand that it is not a journey or we are finished the journey. No, no. If we're done with our journey, we can as well go and be with our Lord. It's a continued journey whereby we continue to unravel and we continue to see ourselves. And while we continue to see ourselves, we continue to put in the work. And then, because the more experience you have knowing you, the more clear or the clearer your lens will be to identify things that previously seemed like it was normal for you, then you now start to see, oh, this is not normal. This is not right. So that's the whole concept. Now, prior to now, I had a very big issue highlighting my value or wins, right? And this would be coming back to this case whereby there are opportunities and I'm unable to really speak up about those opportunities or that I'm suit of or fit for that opportunity just because there is just that inner thing that feels like, oh, you're going to be coming off as pompous, you're going to be coming off as this, or what if they don't accept you, or what if they don't see you in that light? This happened to me when I was in my previous organization, whereby there was actually an opportunity, right? And then my colleagues, my immediate team members were like, Success, you're good with this. Like, you can do this, you can do that. And I'm like, no, no, no. They're like, go in and have a, I'm like, nah, how will I have a conversation? Like, oh my God. And I was just there, really hoping that somebody would just speak up. Nobody did. And the opportunity passed. Basically, and that's what happened most times. And then I gave myself a perfect example of, or a perfect consolation of, hey, if it's for me, it will come. Whilst there's some instances or there's some cases whereby, oh, people would actually push your case. Nobody can push your case like you. And then I remember this incident because I now remember in the current organization that I'm in at the moment, where there was a compensation conversation whereby we had to speak on a conversation about salary and all those things. And then I look at the conversation that I had, I was able to highlight the value I brought in. I had metrics to back it from what the target was and how I exceeded the target, and on some case even doubled the target, and how I was able to work beyond even my job description. And with all of that, even when I was having a conversation with my what's it called now, employer, who was offering an increase of more than 50% in this case. Before now, I would have said, Success, I was like, no. And I could have a conversation to let him understand that whilst this is effort on your part, based on the value I'm bringing in, this is not the standard. And then I was able to come to a place whereby he even acknowledged that, oh wow, yes, I acknowledge the value that you're bringing in, and I can actually say, and I can actually say that, what's it called? Yes, you should be paid more for this. That in that moment was a big win for me, because I had done this work prior to now, and I never really had the opportunity to see if it worked, if I had imbibed it or not. But now coming to a different scenario, which is like 3 years after, I now saw it play out, and I'm not able to see a scenario whereby I'm able to speak up for myself, put the values on the table without feeling like I'm being pompous or being proud. And then I also got the affirmation from the person I was speaking to that, yes, you're correct about this. Yes. And I'm like, nah, we can get there. But we need to first of all see that there's a problem somewhere in how you're able to, accept feedback. Are you scared of feedback? Constructive feedback for you feels like personal attack, like they're attacking you as a person. Are you able to separate like the feedback from, or say the tone of how someone is telling you or whatever? Are you able to do that? Or are you choosing to overwhelm yourself with work just because you want validation? Whereby you are driving, you're working overtime. You can't say no. You can't say, well, I'm not available at this time. You're just getting the work done because of the need to validate you, not because you love excellence or because you have a personal standard, but because rest feels very uncomfortable for you. All of these things shows up in your career. Very much so. Especially when we are actually having a pandemic of people who are unable to rest, where they're resting and it feels like, oh, I should be moving, and it's pretty difficult for me to move. I'll leave career now. Let's move to relationships. Now, this could actually look as avoiding vulnerability, where you can't communicate. And by the way, I would like to put in an emphasis based on what Isaac said earlier. Communication is a learned skill. Nobody came down from heaven with expert communication skills. And it's not temperament dependent. I want to say this because communication is not talking only. There are various ways to communicate. So it's you understanding your own personality and tailoring your communication to your personality. And effective communication is the sender sends, you're able to overcome the barrier, the receiver receives, and the receiver is able to decode what you sent and able to provide a response. That is effective communication. Channel notwithstanding, medium notwithstanding. Medium is context specific, channel is context specific. So communication is a skill that is not left for a select few, is every single person. So the conversation of I'm introverted, I'm shy, is not an excuse not to be able to communicate. It's a skill. Just like somebody learns to play ball. There could be natural biological I won't say advantages now, traits that makes it easier for one person to pick on the skill faster than the other. And it's same thing with life. Even when you look at children developing, some will develop faster than the other. There are some children that require additional attention to be able to get to some stages, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible. So communication is not a skill that is reserved for a few. It's a very important requirement in relationship. In fact, there are three core things that actually can make or mar your relationship or marriage in this context. One is communication, second is finances, and three is sex. These three things, if you cannot sit in and have clear standards or agreement as it's bespoke to your own context, then there will be problem. So it's important for us to see that when we are seeing the cases of people avoiding vulnerability, you are present but you are guarded, you are overgiving just to secure love, or you are emotionally withdrawn during conflict, things like you just leave the space and you are not having conversations just because, oh well, it's safer for me. And then in case whereby you are choosing partners who are unavailable repeatedly and you call it bad luck, or you're choosing partners with the same patterns, when it's a case of you just being familiar with a certain type of attachment and you don't realize it because it's a subconscious thing, it's happening inside of you. It's important for us to watch out because, like Ori said earlier, love can blind your eye, right? But if you're able to identify these patterns, you can see them, they start to shout at you. Same way you have a case whereby, oh, when you start thinking about, oh, I want to get a red car, red starts to pop up. Like you start to see red cars everywhere. It's not because they were not always there. It's because you've already brought an awareness to your mind, and your subconscious now has picked that and is driving with that to ensure that it just picks every single thing that is familiar with that thing you have placed in your subconscious, and it starts to bring your attention to it. So that is why you cannot actually you can't ignore the inner work, which is why your inner world is important. What conversations are you having with yourself? Are you currently hitting yourself with harsh criticism just because you want to ensure that you get going? No time to sit, no time to you. Are you actually being considerate to yourself? Right? Is there any form of anxiety? Do you actually not have the ability to get feedback? Do you take feedback as shame on yourself? Is there always like emotional numbness, or you have dramatic, oh God have mercy with us. I just remembered something, and like there's just that dramatic sadness where something happened, and then I'll give you a scenario. Something happened when I was in university. I just laughed because this was actually very funny. I had gotten into hostel, and I had seen that, oh, this is the person that I was assigned to be my roommate. Now, this person in previous scenarios or previous time had issues with her roommate, whereby that resulted to, physical harm and everything. And I came into a space whereby I now found out that this person was my roommate. I know myself, I don't have power. I was obviously dealing with the people pleasing thing, whereby I just want to be on the good side. And I got into the room, I turned off the light, I was dramatic, I cried, painted a full scenario of me being beaten to the point that I was rushed to the God have mercy on me. And I was rushed to the hospital. It was a full scene in my head. It was a full drama scene. That my parents even came to school. I had cried well in the room because I created the atmosphere for it. That is just dramatic. For God's sake. That is just simply being dramatic. But you will be amazed how these things actually happen. Because for you, your subconscious is like, okay, this is something. And then you're further validating and saying this is what it is for us. So now, finally, before I move away from this slide, I'm going to bring it to the spiritual context because, like Sherry said, that we're spiritual people, right? So this could actually show up as we're serving constantly, we're always being available, we're pouring out, we're never actually slowing down enough to process our own pain. Spirituality becomes a way to bypass your emotions. So instead of sitting with grief, we quote verses, and instead of acknowledging our anger or the lack of faith in a particular scenario, instead of admitting exhaustion, we're saying, I'm just waiting on God. Is waiting on God bad? No, I'm a believer to the core. But one thing we even see from the Bible, especially with the man after God's heart, David, is that sitting in with your emotion is spiritual. It's not a sign of lack of maturity. In fact, it's a sign of maturity for you to be able to sit in with yourself to say, this is where I am. In some cases, trauma can obviously shape the way you relate with God. If you have daddy issues, right, with your earthly father, it would inform how well you're able to really plug into God as your daddy. These things show. And it's not usually very apparent in the sense that, oh, we're able to see it, especially because we naturally are blinded towards ourselves. So none of these things actually mean that your faith isn't real, which is why a lot of the times you would even see people that have grown in their ministries, even to be like, oh, pastors, leaders, and they're dealing with so many things, so many traumatic experiences, and they feed that into the doctrine because they don't sit in to realize that the leader that is saying, this is my church, this is my this, a leader that can actually just say, if it's not fine by you, please leave. They don't realize that this is the secondary school student that did not get an opportunity to have a say and has lived with that thing over the years and has finally got in a position of leadership and says, this is my time to show up and have a say. You grown up, you don't realize it, but that secondary school child, student in you literally wants to have a voice, and it shows up in your spontaneous responses. And that is something that we need to be able to pay attention to, and we need to be able to see that these patterns actually repeat themselves. There's so much research that shows, I won't bore us with all of that, that shows this thing. But the thing is, when we're sitting with ourselves and we ask ourselves the right question and we are true with ourselves, we would actually see it. Why are you in 3 departments in church? What's the problem? Like, what's happening? What are you trying to run away from? Why are you unable to actually create like distinct time to say I'm serving at this time? And why are you struggling to be able to take medications when you clearly need to take medications? What's the struggle? Like, why is it very difficult for you to even sit in and say, okay, I was speaking to someone recently, and then one of the things that was a problem was the fact that, okay, at the period she had exams, it was she had multiple exams she has to prepare for, and she was in the what's it called? She was in the, I can't remember the department. But she had reached out to say, I have exam for this period, so I won't be available to come in and show up in church. And then she's getting feedback like, if you giving your service to God, that God can make it happen. You don't have to reduce, if your studies or whatever is reducing your commitment to God, that means there's something wrong somewhere. But the person, the leader that is saying that to somebody, obviously has something there. If you cannot show up excellently at your work because you are trying to be spiritual or show up at church, is there something wrong somewhere? Or you're meant to be working and then you're using your work time to be running 12 hours of prayer, there's something wrong somewhere. As spiritual as it sounds, there's something wrong somewhere. Or you are managing you have your finance to deal with, and you can't separate what is for seed and what is for your own needs. There's something wrong somewhere. And these are things that come up as, selflessness, sacrifice. It is amazing, but without context, that even the Bible says it, that every single thing that you do, your service must be without compulsion. There must be context to it, because even God is not concerned about what you give. It's concerned about the context of your heart to what you give. So if we have a lot of people that are in the activity loop of, we need to show up in church, you are, for a practical example, we saw a conversation I had recently. You are a toddler mom, and then you are in 3 departments in church, and you forget the fact that your own ministry to raising your children is a very key ministry to the kingdom. You barely have time to be present because you are across like 3 different departments and all of that. I'm talking to myself, I was there. And then when I had the conversation to say, I'm sorry, I can't function because I'm effective. I'm a very effective person. I literally would always want to deliver excellently across board. But when I needed to have a conversation, I know that I'm effective in this position, but I'm in a phase whereby I cannot manage these two because I need to prioritize my family and my children. It was a conversation of, but there's a need in church. And I'm like, no, I'm not available. I'm not available. And there's no two way about it. So I need us to be able to come and see ourselves, to see where we are not putting boundaries. And putting boundaries does not mean that, we are not committed to God. And if you sit in with the Holy Spirit, there are days whereby the Holy Spirit will tell me that you had better drop that thing and focus. I used to be the person that would sit down and I would listen to messages 247, heads plugged in, messages back to back to back to back to back. There was a time in my life the Holy Spirit has told me that, what exactly do you know about business? Have you read books? Like, I would read spiritual books. I'll do all that back to back to back. But I was inefficient. I didn't have strategies to be able to apply to the real world context, to business context. And when the Holy Spirit told me, stop listening, stop listening to messages. And is it because the messages are bad? No. It's because there's an abuse. The context from which I was doing it was from a place of lack of understanding and the pressure to want to be able to say, I need to get this, I need to get this done. One thing you know is this: when you sit in to have conversations with yourself, right, you're able to see yourself clearly. It can help you now then move forward, which is where we are moving on to next. Now you're able to identify all these things and you're able to see what the context is. And let's move on to ID framework. I didn't even delete this. All right. So the first thing here that we need to work on is awareness, right? And then this is pretty important for us because if you're not aware of something, you can't fix it. There's no two way about it, right? If you're not aware, you can't fix it. We've already started with that. The next thing is ownership. Being aware of something doesn't mean you own it. right? You can be aware that there's something wrong, there's something there, and everything. And then let me backtrack a bit. Being aware is not just I'm aware of the actions I have taken or what has happened. No, that's not aware. And everybody knows that. Anybody that was there saw that. When I say being aware, is being aware of the reoccurring triggers, not just the action. What triggers this response? Check it. What's the pattern? What have I noticed that happens before I do this thing? Like, what happens before I start to self-sabotage? What is the thought prompt that comes? Or sometimes it could be whenever I go on Instagram and I just see somebody, I feel good, but when I go on Instagram and I just see this person might not be bad. But maybe you just see this person, you realize that, you guys are age mates. And then you just realize that, it just gets you into a space. Take note of it. Don't hit yourself up. Take note of it. Don't only take note of the fact that I'm always hitting myself up, I'm always self-sabotaging. That won't help you. What triggers it? That's the awareness I'm talking about here. The next thing will be ownership. When you've already taking note of what it is, you have to own it. And owning it does not mean, I'm blaming myself. No, it's you're taking responsibility for it. It was not your fault that you were hurt. It was not your fault that you experienced what you experienced. It was not your fault that you didn't have a conducive environment to build you into the person that you're meant to be. It was not your fault that you were deprived of certain things. But as hard as it is, it's your responsibility to heal. Not your offender, not the person that did anything to you. It's your responsibility to heal. And you would have to give account for it. It seems unfair, but it's the reality. It's your responsibility to heal. And responsibility in this case is not blame, it's agency, it's capability to say that you can choose from now henceforth to say, I'm going to move from here and I'm going to take the next step, whether or not. My memoir that I wrote was basically all about like the different abuses I experienced in my life growing up. And to be honest with you, it was the moment where I started to see the person that abused me as a victim. That was when I knew that I had been freed. And I'd never looked at myself as, I was sexually abused, I was molested. No, I don't see myself like that. No, I see it as I am very well equipped. Now I understand, and I'm able to have conversations with people who have gone through that to be able to work out of it because I understand it, I've walked through it. And right now I feel very much pity for the person in this scenario that did that to me. Because I can already see where the lapses was. I can see what obviously was lacking that resulted to that. I can literally see that this is something that has to be worked on. And it's literally something that birthed the league under Great Cedar, which is very much focused on young boys, teenagers, and also young men. Because I realized that this person that abused me when I was younger was a teenager at the time. And he was a teenager without any form of support structure or even guidance on how to deal with a whole lot of emotional, hormonal changes that happens in the male child that society never really talks about. And all of that happened. They will say, women, the ladies, and women go through a lot of hormonal changes and every single thing. But I found out through research that even the men and the boys, especially in the adolescent ages, they go through a whole lot of emotional disruptions and even sexual hormones, all those things that nobody teaches them how to deal with. And a lot of them actually have to defer to their confused teenagers or friends for advice or solution, which obviously resulted in his exploration to be able to manage that craving that was happening to every single person within the space. It wasn't just me. It was me, it was my siblings, it was my cousins. And it just dawned on me that it wasn't about me. It was him. He had a problem. And the only way that I can pay my own quota to ensure that this doesn't happen again is to come up, and then we started up the league, and the testimonies literally just shows that what I could have sat in with as a victim has now created a pathway for even other boys to get guidance and support. Now we have the popular Every Woman text that anybody here that has come in contact with that book, Every Woman, that book literally is a woman's manual because it gives you everything from when a girl child is born up to menopausal, postmenopausal phase. Where is every man? It's literally what is driving the current project and research we're currently doing at Green City Expression, to be able to publish every man. Because there's a whole lot of things that's happening with boys, with men, that we just come up and tell them to man up. Did you show them what manning up means? It's the reason why I'm super excited that we have men in this room today having this conversation, because we need to understand that what could have been a reason for you to cave in can be your launch pad to move out. It just depends on how you see it, on how you own it, on how you're able to repattern after you own it. And this is something that is very, very profound and simple. And I'll wrap up with this. Now, in all of this conversation, repatterning is the main work after you've owned it. And that is bespoke. I cannot cover that in a general conversation, to be honest. And I won't even bother trying to. Which is why I said from the beginning that my goal for today's conversation is to bring awareness and not to solve your problems, because it takes bespoke support. A bulk of it, which is the initial part of awareness and ownership, you can walk through yourself if you're able to ask the right questions and tell yourself the right answers. You can walk through with counseling sessions and, to be able to help you check in, right? What exactly resulted in what? What exactly resulted in what? It makes it easy for you to see. You might come here and be looking at what happened in the last 3 years, and then you sit in front of a counselor. It happened to me. My husband and I literally went in for a session, and then we're talking about, the last 6 years of our marriage and everything, or 5 years as at the time. Was it 5 years? I think it was 5 years. It was last year, earlier, let's say, of our marriage. And the counselor just said, "All right, beautiful. Can we talk about your upbringing for a bit?" Speaking to my husband. And he went again, talked. I'm like, "Baba, we're talking about our marriage now." Kilo, she's like, "What brought it?" But he gave us perspective. They realized that, oh, wow, we can now see how this links to this. So it wasn't a marriage conversation. He was from the onset. So that's literally what counseling helps you do. So I would always recommend it anytime, any day. So for us now to bring everything together as a wrap up, because I know my time is fast spent. We talked about trauma. We talked about how unresolved issues shows up in your career, relationship, your spirituality, and all of that. We've walked through what the practical framework looks like, right? None of this matters if this remains as information, like I said earlier. Healing is not something you agree with. It's something you practice. So this is the truth. The life that you're praying for, that you're working towards, and that you're building requires a regulated version of you, not this version. Not the gifted version of you, not the driven version of you, not the spiritual version of you. All of that is important, but it requires a regulated and integrated version of you. Because success without emotional health eventually becomes exhausting. Influence without internal clarity becomes very dangerous. And spiritual activity without inner healing becomes performance. And that does not give you any reward. Even God says it. So it's important for you to know that the question is not, do I have wounds? The question is, am I willing to address what keeps repeating in my life? And I want us to really sit in with these honest questions. When we're able to sit in with them, you'll be able to find answers. What are you tired of? What are you tired of? If you're not tired, you can't fix anything. Trust me. If you're still in a space where you're like, oh, it's not that bad, and everything is fine, you won't be able to fix anything. But it's important for you to know that for you to get any form of progress in this light, you need to be able to identify your patterns, know what your triggers are. That way, you're able to now start charting your path of growth. If I just give you a template and say this template of growth, you'll be wasting your time. It won't work. There's nothing like that. It won't work. You need to sit through the process, commit through the process, and also become very aware instead of living on auto mode. So thank you guys so much. And that's it from me. I will be very open to questions. I know our time is fast spent, but over to you, Sherry.
That was a masterclass. Excuse me. Thank you, Success, for that session. So many things were said. I don't want to recap what I heard. I want people in the audience to recap what they heard. So can you please switch sharing your screen so that we can have. So I'll just, for me to Something that you have learned. Okay, yeah, I'm back now. So Success said something at the start. What's the one realization that you're getting from this? What's the one action that you are taking from this? And since this is a very large audience, I have the liberty of calling names. So, Eunice, are you able to share something with us? Eunice, are you able to share something with us? Okay. Isaac? Okay. Fumito? Okay, so I will share some of the things that I have. Okay, Fumito, come
No,
on.
I said you go. Me, I was just listening and enjoying. Sorry.
Wow. Okay, so for me, trauma is not what happened to you. You know, it's not about the thing. And there's something interesting that Success mentioned that reminded me of something else that I have heard, is that especially when she quoted that scripture that said, remember not the former things, right? It's like the past brings what happened, you know, you holding on to what has happened, that action brings it into the future to disrupt the joy that is happening in your future. So something has happened to you, say someone said something nasty to you and it really hurt you then. And then you are remembering what that person said that really hurt you then, ruining this brand new day that you probably haven't seen the person in 2 or 3 years, right? But the thing still holds true in your memory like it happened today. We need to let that go, right? I was gonna play a put a finger down game with people that if you're in multiple groups, you know, you find it difficult to rest. I had something funny happen to me yesterday. So I am recovering from a lot of activities, you know, and for me, one thing that Success said was the fact that trauma was something that used to serve you at some time in your life, at some point in your life. It used to be it was safe. But now in this current version of you, or the version of you that is going into the future, right? That mechanism no longer serves you. It is now inhibiting you. It is now keeping you back. It is making you function less as an optimal person that should be like. So let's say iOS version whatever 1.0 came out, it was the in thing at the time, it was 7 at the time, but now there's a version 3.4, right? And you are still on iOS 1.0. It is inhibiting the full capabilities of what your phone should be doing, and that is what trauma is. You know, you are changing context, but there's an underlying theme that is holding through in the different areas of your life, your spiritual life, your relationship, your career. There's an underlying theme. There's this dissatisfaction that is holding through. Then it's something that you need to pay attention to, right? And there's one other thing that stood out to me is the fact that you need to sit with yourself, that ability to sit with yourself, to ask yourself the questions and to take the actions from the asking yourself the questions. So you're not just asking yourself the questions, you are taking decisive actions. Those actions may be very painful. You know, they may be you love to do something, but you are overspent. You need to refuel yourself, you need to refill yourself, right? You need to cut back from those things. So much for sharing and for like pouring out your heart in this session. God bless you. God bless you. Our time is fast spent, but we have time for 1 or 2 questions. And feel free to send those questions to me. Okay, we have a question here. Thank you for sharing that over. I think this is more a generic question. It's not like speaks to a particular thing. So, success, someone has said they sent a direct question to me and said, so, I'll read the question. Would you say that everyone has experienced one form of trauma or another, or is it specific to certain people?
All right, thank you, Shirley. And okay, so like I said, trauma is not an experience; it's the interpretation of the experience.
Okay.
So, um, it's are we saying everybody has had a
So I think the person
split?
is the person is trying to ask if are we I'm not sure, I'm not trying to assume, but
Yeah,
from what I'm reading here, the person is trying to say, okay, that means majority of people, you
yeah,
know, are interpreting situations wrongly and therefore experiencing a form of trauma or another. And then the person just sent a follow-up question to say that, can I sit with myself to resolve a trauma? So trauma is an interpretation of an action, right? So does every traumatic interpretation or every interpretation, do I need to sit with a counselor? Is this something I can sit with myself to walk through
okay,
and to resolve? So that's like it's a problem.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I understand that. Yeah, very, very true and very accurate, right? So the the thought here is this: every life, like I said earlier, pain is a part of life. You will definitely experience pain at various points in your life,
Uh-huh.
right? So to be honest, at every point of a human being's life, as long as you live long enough, you would experience challenges, pain, issues. So there is that tendency for it to have impact on you.
Uh-huh.
Now, what becomes traumatic for you is unprocessed um, pain. That's what becomes
Uh-huh.
traumatic. So, for example, at some point, our grandparents, they grew old and they died, right? That's loss, right? For some people, they sat in and processed it, were able to walk through how that made them feel. For those that were close to their grandparents and all of that, someone else would literally just move on in that situation. So, to answer your question, majority of people at one point in their life would have to walk through the process of identifying and nipping their trauma at the spot and then walking through it, right?
Uh-huh.
So it doesn't mean there's anything wrong.
Uh-huh.
Face of life, as long as you live long enough, just ensure you live long enough, you definitely have certain experiences that will hit you deep,
Yeah.
right? But your responsibility is to be able to highlight those experiences or take note of them and walk through them, which is why the earlier you okay, I'll say it this way: people that come off as though they don't have traumatic experiences are people that have mastered the art of sitting with their problems before, or their pain before they become problems. That's
Hmm.
it.
Sit with your
So
pain before
that's
it becomes a problem.
exactly, so that's the context to have in mind, right? So to now answer the second part of the question, where you it just jumped from my head.
Does everyone, let me read it again. So, do I always need a therapist or a
Do you
counselor?
always need a
Yeah.
therapist?
Mm.
No, no, no. The answer is no. Should be told, the answer is no. But the thing is, after a while, there are initial conversations. Like I said, I remember I gave you three short parts. First, you have the awareness. Second, you have the ownership. That part, right? You can conveniently sit down with yourself. You're being true to yourself because you know yourself best. And even if you sit in front of a counselor, the best thing they will do for you is to ask you same questions and prompt your question further. The part of repatterning is something you would need help with, because if you knew better, you would have done better a long time ago.
Mm.
So
Mm.
to sit in with yourself to say, oh, I'm going to repattern myself, let's be true with ourselves, right? So even the therapist needs a therapist. I want you to know that,
Mm. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there is that blind spot. There would always be a blind spot. There would always,
Mm.
no matter how excellent you are, there would always be a blind spot that you need someone else to be able to help you see. So do you need to go to a counselor every time? No. Do you need to go to a counselor sometimes? Yes. In fact, where I am currently is where we have annual check-ins. And then I even listened to Pastor Aaron recently, and I'm like, okay, maybe we're going to make it more frequent. Maybe we'll do it by annual or something. And I realized that a lot of the time when I even go in there, like I told you the last time I went last year, that when we went in thinking that, oh, this is what we're coming in to discuss, we didn't even realize that there was something else that, oh, he was able to point out that we didn't even think was in the context at all. So imagine that perspective we wouldn't have gotten if we didn't sit in front of a counselor. You get, so not every time, nope, but you definitely should have it as part of your routine, as part of something that you also put in as your own life growth plan. That's my thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sit with your pain before it becomes a problem. You don't need a counselor to sit with your pain, but you might need a counselor. You would need a counselor to reframe, to have a new pattern. And this reminds me of something you had mentioned during the talk, during your session with us, right? About how the brain has the ability to, reposition itself such that your brain is giving you a traumatic response based on what has happened that you haven't processed, and you're now thinking, that's how I am. That is not how you are. You need to help your brain to realign to the normal functioning of how you should be functioning, right? So I think for me, the greatest action here is sit with yourself, process it, name it. Okay, understand it, understand the problem, understand what it is you're feeling, understand it first. We have another question from AJ. Your hand is up.
Oh no, so it wasn't a question actually. It was
Okay.
just an addition
Okay.
to what Mary says. I think she actually captured what I was saying to the question that was asked. Certain times you just need to really sit down yourself and really take stock of the pain. I think one of the reasons why sometimes some people find or have issues with stuff like this is that I don't know whether to say we idolize the pain or sometimes we don't even want to just address the pain, right? We just want to pretend like it never existed or it never happened, right? Saying Trying to ignore the pain doesn't take it away. It doesn't stop the knowledge that that pain actually happened.
Yeah.
Same with loss as well. The fact that you ignore and you want to ignore the pain of the loss of someone doesn't take away the fact that that person is actually no more there, right? But having the boldness to face that pain, right? Having the boldness to say, okay, let me sit down, let me take a stock, right, of this pain and see where I am at as a person, right, is what makes the difference. It's taken me a long while, right? For those close to me, they were where I lost my mom in 2023. And truth be told, it's taken me a long while to get to this position where I can, to some little extent, talk about it, right? But just imagine I never actually even tried to sit down. Again, like I said, I'm still a work in progress because there's still the days where I cry. Okay, there's no sugarcoating around it. There's still days where I cry about it, but it's taking stock. I think I'll just keep it at that. Just being brave enough to take stock and look at yourself and say, okay, this is a pattern. This is what people have identified about me. Can I actually just sit down and face this? You keep the pain, right? The longer you choose not to identify the pain and try to resolve it, the more harm it can do to you. But yeah, thank you. I think that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Time does not heal anything. Time plus intentional action does the healing. So if you say, with time it gets better. With time, it will just be like it happened yesterday. As Success was teaching, I recall something that happened between a friend of mine and I would relieve the experience. And then one day we were speaking with someone and I just burst out crying like it just happened today. I'm like, oh my God, this has happened many years ago. Why am I still feeling like it's still as fresh? and that made me sit down to say, okay, what even happened? How did it make me feel? Okay, what does the Bible say? Okay. And then I analyzed it and I came to a conclusion. And that was very liberating. Now, yes, the situation happened, but that scourging pain that I was feeling at the time is no longer there. And every time, and the way I see this thing, the analogy that, another analogy comes to mind is like when you do a surgery, an actual surgery, okay, I've done a number of surgeries. So, over time, the doctor comes, they clean the surface of the wound, it's still very fresh. Then over time they take out the sutures, they clean it, they clean it, they clean it until you can see the scar. You press it, but there's no pain anymore. So it's a constant journey. It's not a one of it's not a I do it today and I'm done. Because sometimes the pain will still come back. You go through that process again, reminding yourself. You go through it again, reminding yourself. After a while, you will still feel the scar. You will remember what happened. You will go to that place, but you just realize that it's just like, okay, you don't feel that pain, you don't feel that hurt, you don't feel that anymore. We have Eneze's hand up. Eneze.
Hi, Olishiri. Thank you, Success, for that session. Even though I had to drop off at some point, but I'll be sure to catch up later. My network kicked me out and I just couldn't join it. The question I have is this. So I personally believe that intending couples should get to do counseling or therapy. And I don't mean premarital counseling where they do it together. I believe separately where they get to go through. That's if they haven't done it before. And where this mindset is for me is the fact that I just believe that we are all broken one way or the other, and we have like trauma that we get to um that we get to experience over time. So I feel like if they get to do that beyond the premarital counseling, if they get to do that, it might help make things easier because sometimes you hear some people say, "Oh, there's some trauma started creeping in when they got married and all of that." But now the question I have is this: should this be like I don't know the word benchmark. No, not benchmark now. Should this be made I don't know, the word has just left my head, but something compulsory. Like should that be like, oh, anyone
A deal
anyone
breaker.
else, yeah, exactly. Or yeah, maybe not deal breaker per se, but like, oh, anyone else get married. So like I want them to ensure that they go through therapy. Especially given the fact that sorry, this question is not getting too long, but especially given the fact that sometimes some guys find it difficult to do these things. They'll be like, oh, I'm all right, and all of that. And it might just be, oh, I don't think I'm interested in that. We can do the premarital counseling together, but maybe in terms of therapy, I don't think I really want to do that. But if it's something that is important to, um, because for me, something that's important to me as an individual, and I feel like it will make the quality of our marriage in future better, even from the start. How do you think this can be navigated? And do you personally think that is something that everyone should actually do just to ensure that things are better for them in marriage?
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Enese. And you're very correct. So a few marital counseling programs that I know that is handled by a counselor, the couples usually would go for individual sessions of counseling, which in the case of therapy now comes in based on things that we've observed from their individual conversations. But I know this is not the norm everywhere. This is paid counseling I'm talking about now. Someone reached out to me recently around the fact that they're planning to get married soon, and the first thing I just told them, I sent them the link. Yeah, both of you should sign up for marital counseling, and especially because we are in an age whereby we're like, okay, we just do counseling at church and everything, and it should be told
Sorry
the
to
church is
interrupt
actually.
you, Success. There's a feedback. I think your phone is
Oh,
still
right.
Yeah,
having
there's some noise
feedback.
that I'm
Yeah,
hearing.
yeah, yeah,
Is it still? Can you still hear it?
yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, when you start speaking, it comes up.
Okay. Are you hearing it now?
Yes. When you stop, it stops. So
That's
something
true.
there's an interference, there's a technology interference somewhere.
Okay, I'm not sure how to fix that because everything has been the same. Is it still? It's still that way? Let me
When you
stop and
start
double.
speaking, it comes back.
Okay, let me stop.
Okay. How many married people do we have here?
Okay. Is it the
Okay,
same?
start us back. Yeah.
Is it the same thing now?
No, it's all good now.
Okay, I think I'll just leave my. Okay, so what I was saying was that marital counseling, you're very correct, Inezi. Marital counseling, very important. And I'm not just talking about the one that you just sit in church and then they'll tell you that, oh, wife submit to your husband, husband, so love your wife and submit. That is very profound, by the way. But anytime anybody or a couple of people that have reached out to me to say, oh, yeah, they're about to get married or don't get married, the first thing I do is I send a link to them, sign up for counseling. And the few counseling outlets that I know, professional counseling, they run you through the entire curriculum, inclusive of individual sessions and therapy where needed. So therapy is usually focused on, yeah, I know. But most people, all they do is the church one. They won't pay for counseling. Most people wouldn't.
Yeah, most
You
people actually just do the church one. I don't think
Exactly,
that's enough.
which is most times not comprehensive, to be honest. A few churches are already starting to, further expand their curriculum, but it's not comprehensive. I went through an expanded curriculum, to be honest, but it wasn't at all close to it. So yes, you're very correct. The fact is each person should have individual sessions, and then each person should also walk through. So if there are hints of conversation that needs to happen, that needs to happen, then you guys need to have joint sessions. But a full-fledged counseling program already has all of that embedded in it, from biological to psychological to spiritual. All those things are meant to be covered in the conversation. Secondly, one thing to note is that how you communicate. One thing I know with men is that they see, I mean, I learned the hard way. I won't lie to you that there is that place of the men figuring things out themselves,
Mm.
and a lot of the times there is a big ego play. So the worst thing you want to do to a man is tell a man that we need to fix ourselves. Like it's fine now, fix Bao. And it's fine. So one thing I realized is that the things that I did not necessarily have to use macho power for, I speak from a place of what he cares about. What he cares about is me. You care about me, right? That's why you say use your woman power. I don't know why women are trying to be men. Even me, I'm just learning it. There should be a way to communicate to him to let him know that, oh, let's just go through these things. This is something that would probably help us. You never know what we'll learn, depending on the person. Anyways, you always know how to like tailor it to the person you're dealing with. In other cases, like what we always say, if you are with a person, be aware who has authority over that person. Be aware of the person that can, in one call like this, say, hello, buddy, I hear that, and you need to, and he will not have to think twice, he would sign up. The worst place to be as a woman, let me just be biased now, is to be in a situation whereby you're with a man that does not have any head over him or any voice over him. That way, you are in for it. But if you're with someone that has a voice over him, it's a conversation that you can easily have from that angle. If maybe you have tried your woman power, I don't know what that means to all the men here, but it's not. It's everything is straightforward. It's not. I'm not judging anybody,
Woman
but
power is you are the woman, you put
yeah, the
yourself,
woman.
whatever
So
you want to do, we
if
make
you
you
have that,
happy.
but
That's woman
definitely
power.
it's a conversation that you should ensure that it happens. Counseling should happen, not just the church counseling. Pay for counseling, budget for it. As you're budgeting for your wedding, budget for counseling. Premarital counseling is very important. I hope that answers your question, Easy.
Yes, it does, in the sense that you expose the fact that in premarital counseling, there's also the part that is the individual part, and if there is need for
Yes,
further counseling, they might refer that.
yes.
So yeah, that works. Thank you.
Because I did mine after I got married. That was when I realized.
Ah, good.
Yes, I did the church marriage before marriage.
No.
Then It was now after I now realized that more we need to fix some things here. Like so yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it's very important.
Thank you, Success.
Extremely important. Thank you, Nisi. Thank you, Success. Not just the church counseling. I went for the paid one, not just the church one, because, well, you understand some things and you're like, no, I want something more in depth. So if you are about to get married here, you're listening to this, and you've already signed up for your church counseling, that is one step. Another step is to carry your own money to go and pay for counseling, because it does help. Sometimes you don't even know what it is you're dealing with until it is mentioned and it is triggered. We'll take this very last question. If you have any other question, please take it to the Sweet community. Success will be there to answer all your questions in the Sweet community. Okay, Samuel. Blessing, Samuel.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Good
Sorry,
afternoon.
this question is a bit of healing and trauma. It's just a leading question from what Success just answered. Saying that we need to know somebody that your spouse or whoever you are, let me say in my own case, like in a relationship with, like the person needs to have a voice and you need to know who the person is. So what happens in a case where you are with someone that his dad is everything. When I say everything, I mean his dad is his biological dad, right? And then he's also his spiritual dad, because the dad is the pastor, and, and then he's also his mentor. And then you are always in a situation where you are saying, I think you need to get someone else. But then it sounds a bit, I don't understand if you understand where I'm going to. Yeah, so how do you, in that case, try to get the person to understand the place of an external, like Success said, if you have a problem, not necessarily a problem, but you need to talk to somebody about it, you necessarily cannot even go to his father because he's his father. So how do you try to get him to understand that there's a place for an external voice?
All right, thank you very much, Blessing. That's a very profound question, I must say. I think the first thing to note rather in this scenario is one, a person's father can actually be their mentor. And it's not even a case of position now, it's a case of who is the person and what are the person's values. I feel like when we're even looking at mentors or people, voices of influence over us, the conversation that we should be looking at is what is this man's value and does it align with where we want to be? Now, if you look at how this person is, so I think one of the things that you look at whenever you're talking about modeling in a case whereby you're like, oh, looking at this man's marriage, looking at this man's life, looking at how this man treats his wife, is this something that is enviable in terms of what you're working towards? Should be told, if that is the case whereby there is that exemplary lifestyle, there is that space whereby he has portrayed clear values that you see that can be emulated, that shouldn't be your primary struggle because he has a voice over his head. Truth is, as he grows, as you guys evolve, it would happen that he would also have other voices. But a voice of influence is not automatic. It's based on interaction, influence over time. So that you are not pushing and steering towards, oh, you don't respect or honor the person I honor. That would be a bigger conversation and harder to deal with. So there has to be some wisdom to be able to approach the situation. Except maybe you've already seen or witnessed the fact that half of the 20 man they talk, I don't really. That's when you now know that okay, this is a conversation worth having with him. Then the conversation will now be context specific. You will now say, okay, can we have a conversation on this specific issue? Because if he doesn't see a need for an external voice, he will not take your words seriously. So you can start from the context. Don't make it start like I'm telling you to go and find another mentor. Why does he need a mentor if he doesn't see a reason why he needs a mentor? Do you get? So it will obviously take like, or you have to sit and observe. What are the gaps or context you feel like, oh, we would actually benefit from this type of mentorship from this person? Because you can't have one mentor that covers every area of your life, to be honest. You can have a career mentor, you can have a family mentor. So maybe you guys are having, say, career conversations now. And then he already has his dad as a spiritual mentor, or maybe you're having this conversation and you're just talking about it. Oh, who exactly do you admire? If he comes in and says that, you're like, oh, okay, tell me more about him. Like more, that interest already settles the fact, it brings his guard down, that you're not trying to fight him from. And that way, you already have access to now have influence, if need be, when you're able to see things clearly. But if you come from the onset of, oh, you need to get on that mentor, trust me, the walls are up. There's nothing you want to say. There's no English you want to tell him. It won't make any sense. But if you are able to come from the place of affirming and honoring the already existing authority he has over his life, then in conversations, try to stir up the need, if there's even a need for another mentor in that context, then the conversation can happen. But if you want to come in from a fix-it mindset, trust me, it will bounce back. I promise you, it will push back.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's clear or if it helped in any way. My little okay.
Thank you, Success. And in addition, just pray about everything. Like, just take it to God. If you feel a need or you don't feel a need, you find out that you get strategies that even you'll be like, oh wow, I wouldn't have thought about it that way. I wouldn't have thought about, phrasing it that way. It could be even over food. Oh, and then something will just happen. You just relate it. Oh, you're such a wise woman. And then you wink at the Holy Spirit and say, Baba, thank you. So because we are a faith-based organization and everything we do here, our first frame of reference, Jesus is not a last resort. God is not our last resort. It's the first resort, second resort, third resort. Praise God. I just had to add that. All right, that brings us to a good close. Today it's been interesting. I've had a good time facilitating this session. I would encourage us to go back and listen. We're on YouTube at Success Within International. We're streaming live on YouTube, so feel free to go back. If you're not a part of the community, it's important that you join the community. A lot of things happen on there. If you have more questions, Success will be there. So please feel free to drop your questions on the SWE community. Yeah, let me see if I have any other information for us. One quick check, quick final check that I have covered, dotted all my I's and crossed all my T's today. Yeah, we meet here monthly, third Saturdays. So look out for us on Instagram at Success Within International. We're on every social media platform. LinkedIn, we're there. So look out for us and follow us. We share insightful and exciting not just content, but content that will bless you. That content that when you act upon will take you from where you are to where you want to be. Okay, on that note, I'll just say a quick word of prayer and we can call it a day. Father, we say thank you for opening our eyes. Thank you for the deliverances that has happened here today through this conversation. Thank you for eyes that have been opened to see even things that they did not know. Thank you for letting us know that trauma is not what happened to you, it's the interpretation. And thank you for teaching us that we are empowered to work with you and to work with the people that you have empowered to help us overcome the things that we're struggling with. We thank you because we are blessed in you in the name of Jesus. We thank you for SWE, Success Within International. We pray that SWE is blessed in the name of Jesus. SWE continues to grow in leaps and bounds in the name of Jesus. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen, amen, and amen.
Amen. Thank you, team. Thank you, Success.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye,
God bless
guys.
you. Yep, bye.
Thank you.